Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're exploring literally one of the most thrilling alternate histories you could ever imagine. We're looking at what would actually happen if the absolute kings of the ancient world, I'm talking the massive megalodon and the terrifying T-Rex, somehow survived all the way to the modern day. We usually think of extinction as this hard full stop, right? But today, we're hitting the unpause button on their evolution. Seriously, I want you to really think about this for a second. Imagine a timeline where that massive, 9-mile-wide asteroid just completely missed Earth 66 million years ago. Imagine a world where the prehistoric oceans never cooled down enough to permanently starve out the giant sharks. What would these incredible predators have had to turn into to still be sharing the planet with us right now, today? Okay, let's dive into our roadmap for this alternate Earth. We've got 5 cosmic checkpoints to get through. The apex predator trap, when the world shifts, revenge of the runts, the Ice Age gauntlet, and finally, the butterfly effect. All right, jumping into Chapter 1, the apex predator trap, or the danger of being perfect. So before everything went sideways, these predators had basically completely solved their environments. Let's start with the absolute raw power of the T-Rex. We're talking about an animal packing an 8,000-pound bite force. Just to put that into perspective, that is enough raw pressure to literally crush a modern car into scrap metal or punch right through solid bone. Oh, and add to that binocular vision with better depth perception than a hawk and a sense of smell that rivals modern big cats. This guy was the pinnacle of a 100-million-year dynasty of just winning. Meanwhile, out in the ocean, you had the megalodon, just a 60-foot wall of muscle that actually ran warm and cold water. But here's the catch. That flawless, super expensive biological perfection came with a massive dietary bill that it couldn't stop paying. A giant megalodon needed close to an entire whale every 2 weeks just to keep its furnace burning. When the ocean was packed with whales, well, life was a glorious all-you-can-eat buffet. And this is the crucial point here. Being perfectly built for your world is actually a trap. Sure, being an unstoppable, massive giant is perfect for a world full of dense Cretaceous forests or oceans just teeming with bite-sized whales. But that flawless adaptation, it becomes your absolute greatest, deadliest liability the very second those specific environments disappear. Which brings us to Chapter 2, when the world shifts. The liability of size. You see, the planet didn't just stay still. Over time, sudden environmental disasters took these giants' greatest biological strengths and brutally flipped them into their worst weaknesses. Let's walk through this timeline. Say 66 million years ago, the asteroid misses. Awesome for the dinosaurs. But then 56 million years ago, the Earth experiences this massive global warming event. Fast forward to 34 million years ago, global forests start shrinking while flat grasslands expand. And finally, around 3.5 million years ago, the planet's oceans start to dramatically freeze up. So what's really interesting here is how in both warming and cooling climates, being huge became this sort of slow-motion execution. During that massive global warming phase, giant Tyrannosaurus quite literally cooked from the inside out because their massive bulk just couldn't shed the heat. And then, millions of years later, giant megalodons faced a chillingly similar fate. As the oceans froze and those shallow, warm coasts drained away, the massive whales they relied on vanished. That just left the giants to slowly starve to death. All right, Chapter 3, Revenge of the Runts. Basically, adapt or die. Okay, so nature has this ultimate rule. And spoiler alert, survival of the fittest does not mean survival of the strongest. Survival actually rewards the ones most willing to change. Take the megalodon. While the giant, 60-foot, warm-blooded, perfect specimens starved, guess who survived? A genetic mistake. This smaller, cold-running runt of the litter we'll call Sable. This new lineage, let's call it Megalodon X, survived those freezing oceans because it needed just a fraction of the food. It completely gave up being the biggest, baddest king of the ocean. Instead, it survived by running cheap, needing way less fuel, and actively avoiding fights with new pack hunters like early killer whales. Up on land, the T-Rex had to undergo a pretty wildly drastic downgrade in size to survive too. As those ancient forests gave way to vast, flat grasslands with absolutely zero ambush cover, a multi-ton predator just couldn't sneak up on anything anymore. So they evolved. They became much smaller, way leaner, and they started forming packs. They actually learned to spread out into loose crescent formations, communicate over miles using these deep infrasound pulses, and basically run their prey to exhaustion. Honestly, very much like a modern wolf. Moving on to Chapter 4, the Ice Age Gauntlet. Surviving chaos. Now, the sudden arrival of these chaotic, freezing ice ages and, of course, the incredibly unpredictable rise of humans forced both of these once mighty lineages into some extremely weird new forms just to hang on. The T-Rex lineage splintered wildly to conquer every shifting corner of the Earth. Picture this. You'd have massive, heavily feathered tyrannosaurs stalking prey across the freezing tundra. You'd have solitary, old-school giants hiding out in shrinking equatorial rainforests. And, get this, you'd even have 300-pound dwarf tyrannosaurs hunting cat-sized deer on isolated islands. It really goes to show that life will shrink you down to the size of a dog if it means surviving.
But while the dinosaurs diversified on land, our buddy Megalodon X faced a really unique tragedy out in the oceans. Imagine surviving 2 million years of brutal ice ages, avoiding killer whales, perfectly dialing in your whole survival strategy, only to be pushed to the absolute brink by guys in wooden boats. Yeah. In just about 100 years, human whaling wiped out 3 million whales for stuff like lamp oil and corset stiffeners. We essentially accidentally scraped the ocean clean of the megalodon's entire food supply, all without even knowing the shark was down there.
So to survive us, the modern Megalodon X, which would now only be about 8 to 14 feet long and pale on the bottom to blend in, had to dive incredibly deep and basically become a ghost in the dark. But as you can see here, the threats to it today aren't rival killer whales or even climate shifts anymore. By far, its absolute biggest threat right now is factory runoff. Toxic chemicals dumped into the sea stack up the food chain, which means our ultimate apex survivor is literally being poisoned from the inside out by heavy metals and synthetic chemicals soaking into its body with every single meal.
This brings us to Chapter 5, the butterfly effect, the true cost of survival. And this is the ultimate twist in our explainer today. We have to look at what it would actually cost, our timeline, and the world as we know it, if these perfect monsters had successfully adapted and never left. Let's look at the ocean first. If Megalodon X or any of its giant ancestors had remained the dominant ocean hunter, modern whales would look entirely different. The blue whale is the largest animal to ever live on Earth, right? But it only got that big because the megalodon died. The second those giant sharks vanished, whales finally have the safety to grow into massive, unbothered giants. So in a way, the blue whale is essentially a giant biological statue built to commemorate the megalodon's extinction.
But the cost on land? That is even more profound. For 165 million years, the dinosaurs filled every single large predator and herbivore slot. And because of this, mammals, our ancestors, stayed completely trapped in the underbrush as tiny nocturnal scavengers. They were basically just waiting for an opening that, in this alternate timeline, simply never came.
Which builds to a stunning and honestly sobering reality. Think about it. If the T-Rex lineage survived and evolved into these pack-hunting wolves of the savanna, primates never come down from the trees, hominids never walk upright, humans never exist. A thriving alternate Earth ruled by highly evolved, intelligent tyrannosaurs is an incredibly beautiful, balanced world for sure, but it is completely empty of anyone capable of painting a cave wall, inventing math, or gazing up at the stars to wonder how they got there.
Which leaves us with this final, provocative thought. We so often view the extinction of the dinosaurs as one of Earth's greatest tragedies, right? But your very ability to watch this explainer, to think and to wonder about alternate histories, all of that was entirely paid for by the extinction of Earth's greatest predators. The asteroid clearing the board was literally the only reason mammals ever had room to grow. So, was the asteroid really a tragedy, or was it just your origin story?